Good afternoon. Wow. You just had a lot of good food. There's still caffeine on the bar over here, right? Does anybody need caffeine? No? No? Right there? All right. What do you need? Coffee. We've got Cokes. Coffee? All right. How do you take it? Do you take it black? Do you put sugar in it? What? Wow, so you taint your coffee. Yeah? Okay. All right. So, real sugar or the fake stuff? You're skinny, the real stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, so, well, we'll get there. How you doing?
Doing fine.
Good. Let's see, half and half. Oh, here it is. Here's the half and half. Anybody else need coffee? Caffeine? No? You sure? Okay, so let's try this again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
That's a lot better. Because I've been hanging out in this community for the last couple of days here at the conference, hanging out with Graham, hanging out with Larry, hanging out with Lee, Donato, a whole bunch of the guys. And it's been a very friendly and warm and welcoming community, and I've really appreciated that. So thank you. So who is this guy up here? This is me, Josh Holmes. You can't really read that, I guess. You can. I do work for Microsoft. I'm an official blue badge employee. So, big old official blue badge. You can reach me on my blog at joshholmes.com. There up at the top, it actually says my Twitter ID, which is more readable over here at Josh Holmes. This is honestly probably the most important slide in the deck because you can take this home and you can contact me later, but you can't take me home unless you've got really, really good homebrew beer. Anybody brew beer? I do actually roast beans as well, hand-roasted coffee. I don't know if you guys know this, but coffee actually tastes the best between 12 and 24 hours after it was roasted. So if you get pre-roasted beans and bring them back to the house, they're losing flavor every single day. So if you actually get green beans and roast them yourself, which you can actually do with an air popcorn popper, I'm sorry, squirrel. Slightly ADD. So a lot of people, though, even though this has been a very warm and friendly and welcoming community, have been asking me what Microsoft is doing here. Why are we coming to here? The reality is we're a platform company. We write a lot of platforms. Now, we write a lot of finished applications as well. So if you look at Office or if you look at, there's a whole lot of different products that we produce that are complete finished applications that your users are using on a daily basis. But the thing is that most of those are actually platforms of themselves. So if you look at Office, do you know that you can actually build applications that run within Office and do work within the Office suite itself? So as an example, one of my contracts before I joined Microsoft was actually writing a natural language processor that lived inside of Word. And as the business requirements folks were writing a requirements analysis documentation, it was reverse engineering what they were typing in natural language into technical specs and requirements and actually starting to generate test code so that we could, on the technical side, take those tests and start applying them to the code that we were writing. That was awesome. I loved that. And it lived right there within the document, so I didn't have to go translate human to geek. Because we've all been there. That's a worse translation than human to Japanese, right? Human to geek is a very, very difficult translation. Or English to Japanese, sorry. Sorry. Very sorry. Okay, so we're a platform company. Windows, SQL Server, we've got a lot of different platforms that we write in. And if you take a quick look back through history, how many people have tried PHP on Windows before? How many people are still doing PHP on Windows? That's less numbers, right? Because many of you have tried this in the past, and it's not been a great experience because it was slow. It was painfully slow in a lot of cases. So if you go back to Internet Explorer 5, not Internet Explorer, Internet Information Server. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've been at home, been on the road. This is actually my third conference this week. So I've been on the road for 10 straight days. It's been kind of nuts. So I apologize for some of the little slips here and there. But if you go back to Internet Information Server 5 and 6, running on Windows Server 2000, 2003, etc., moving on up, it was slow, it was painful. It wasn't compatible with a lot of things out there. You had to write code for either Linux and Apache or Windows and IIS, but you couldn't really run things on both sides of the world. There weren't things like mod rewrite and other things on Windows. And this was a very, very painful experience, and so, in short, it made you mad, okay? People feeling that? I know that people were feeling that because they left Windows. They tried it once, and a large number of people didn't come back. So where are we at now? Pigs fly. And at this point in time, we have spent the last 3 to 4 years working very hard on making sure that PHP runs extremely well on Windows and SQL Server. And the fruits of that are starting to come to bear now. Over the past year or so, we've had a tremendous amount of increase in the amount of PHP on Windows out there that people are happy about. So it's fast. We've got a number of different things here with IIS that have really started to take off. FastCGI is fantastic. It's a very fast interpretation engine for PHP. There's other things like WinCache. WinCache is a opcode caching and object caching framework that we've released out through the PECL guys, and so it comes by default with most Windows installations, and all you have to do is make sure that it's on, and you'll automatically see a 3 to 4 time increase in performance over time. Then you can start taking advantage of, in the frameworks and in the applications themselves, some of the object caching and other things, and all of a sudden you start seeing a whole lot more performance. In fact, this past last night, I was up and I saw your own Graham post this, bam! And Windows is fast, talking about WinCache and Hackery and that kind of stuff. Now, to be fair, he was trying this in a virtual machine. So before he puts up any performance numbers or blogs about it or anything like that, he wants to try it on real metal. I'm all for that. But I will say I liked that a lot. So I got pretty excited about that. Windows is compatible. If you've got code that runs on Linux and Apache, it should run on Windows and IIS. You should not have to write the exact same code in multiple places with switch statements for the different platforms. If you run into that situation, email me, josh.holmes@microsoft.com, and I'll get on the team to make sure we fix that. Okay? We don't have mod rewrite, but we have a thing called a URL redirect. And there's a fantastic importer right in IIS. I don't know if anybody knew this or not. I know that I was talking to Larry earlier in the week, and he didn't know this. But let me see if I can pull this up real quickly. May be hard to read over there for me. And I've extended my desktop, so it's... All right, so, you know what? We're going to do this a different way. Where's my desktop? Oh, there it is. Oh, it was above. That's weird. It was right, left, above. So I'm going to combine my desktops here. Duplicate. Yeah, see that? All right, so if I go down into one of these sites here, and you can do this on a particular, on an entire website, or you can do it on a particular application itself, so inside of a particular folder. There is handler mappings, and there's HTTP response codes, and so on and so forth. URL rewrite is right there. If I open that up, and up here at the top, there is a import. It may just be off the screen there. There it is. And so import mod underbar rewrite rules. Fantastic. So if you've got a rewrite in an htaccess that you have been using for a long time and like it and have it set up the same way that you want to, and you decide that you're going to try this Windows thing out, or if you're in a situation where you've got a client who's requesting that, import here. And that'll get you 99% of the way. So that is a very fun thing. Okay. Oops, mouse mode. All right. So, oops. Come on, you can do it. So then on the database side, SQL Server. I don't know if you guys have played with SQL Server at all. I know that some of you have and have had less than exciting experiences with it. That was one of the things that came to bear on Thursday night as I got to the bar and started talking about different things, and that was one of the things that was loud and clear was SQL Server was a problem. We released a SQL Server driver for PHP not long ago. Now it says SQL Server driver for PHP 2.0. That's not PHP 2.0. The driver is in 2.0. just to be clear here. But there is a native driver, okay, so that you can do MS SQL underbar, blah, 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 and actually talk to that directly. Or there's actually a whole PDO side over here so you can do the PDO support directly. Anybody using PDO in their applications? Okay, so, all right, cool. And anyways, all that goes back and talks directly to the SQL Server native client, and performance increases on talking through this driver versus the old driver. First of all, it's stable. Second of all, it's fast. So there's a lot of good things there. And in fact, one of the guys on the SQL Server team actually went through and wrote a data source for CakePHP 1x. So where's it at? Right here, it says CakePHP 1x. Somewhere up here, it actually says that he forked. Yeah, right there on the label. Forked from the 1x there. So when I saw that, I was pretty excited about that. And he just threw it up on GitHub, and life was good. And in fact, last night, Graham pushed that out to the data sources up on GitHub. I'm not going to pretend this is production-ready code. But it's code that's available and ready to go. It's going to be faster and more stable than older versions of SQL Server Access that you're going to have access to today. So this is not production-ready code. However, LoadSys, one of our sponsors here, they have a client who's doing a consolidation of IT project, and they're looking to move everything to SQL Server, so they've got one common database for everything. And so they're going to be looking at taking this on through to production-ready code with full unit tests and so on and so forth. So support the LoadSys guys there. Little clap there. Anybody? All right, cool. So, more pigs fly. I don't know if you saw this announcement, but last year, June 2009, Microsoft actually contributed 20,000 lines of code to the Linux kernel. I thought that was kind of cool. Those 20,000 lines of code have to do directly with virtualization. So now, honestly, our motivation for that was Linux. We needed it to run better in our own Hyper-V product. However, that exact same code base that has been contributed back to the Linux kernel helps with VMware, with OracleBox, with VirtualBox, with all the other virtualization players out there on suspend, resume, moving a box from one physical machine to another, changing resources midstream so you can amp up the number of hard drives or size of a particular hard drive or memory. That's what that code base is planning to do. I thought that was kind of cool. So there's a whole lot more, though, that Microsoft has been doing with the PHP world. One of them is that we're all excited about the cloud. Okay, how many people are looking at cloud computing today? Awesome, awesome. That's actually very good. So I'll kind of skip through some of this here, but for the people that are not looking at cloud computing, there's a couple of different plays. In short, when you spin up an application, immediately there's a cost somewhere to get to that first server. And then there is a waste of capacity until you catch up with it. And at some point, and this is right here, we call this the fail whale these days, is when there's an undersupply of capacity. When there's applications, there's more demand than you can have servers, and it's going to take, in a traditional hosting company, a couple of days at least. In a traditional enterprise, what's the average length of time to deploy a new server in an enterprise? 5 months. Industry average. A year. I don't want to work there. 6 weeks is actually the industry average. So having your customers and seeing a fail whale for 6 straight weeks, that's not a good thing. So you overinvest. And this is the one that most people forget about. Okay, they forget about this one. And that is right here, when your customer supply drops off, you've got a big problem. Because you're still paying for all of that infrastructure, all of that support, all that electricity, all that air conditioning, everything else that goes into the data center, but you don't have that demand anymore. Give you a great example, Domino's Pizza. They're based out of Ann Arbor. Anybody Ann Arbor? Go Blue? All right. So they have 2 days a year where they have a huge spike. Anybody guess what those two days a year are? Super Bowl is their second biggest spike by about half. They have 1 day a year that is twice the load that the Super Bowl is. Thanksgiving. I was like, what? Thanksgiving? But sure enough, on Thanksgiving, their web traffic spikes to double what their next biggest spike is. On Super Bowl Monday or the Monday after Thanksgiving, their load drops down to 5% utilization of their data center. Now, they've got a data center that's about twice the size of this room. It's huge, and it's ready to go for Thanksgiving. Okay. Does that sound like a good use of money? No. So to make your pizzas cheaper, they have moved to Azure. And so they're out on Azure, and they're able to scale down during those non-Thanksgiving Super Bowl days. They're able to scale up on, for Friday Night Football or Sunday Football, or what day of the week is it these days? There's college and then there's pro. But they're able to scale up for those, and they're able to scale down after, which makes everybody happy because they're not losing money during that fixed time. There's a dark purple line that you can't really see in this lighting here, but we're trying to match as close as we can to actual usage and saving the money and allowing them to scale up very, very quickly. So, 3 different kinds of cloud solutions to talk about very briefly, or hosting solutions. One is private and on-premise. That's what Domino's was at. They were at private, on-premise, hosted solution. How many people are in a private hosted scenario? You've got your own data center. You get to walk in. It's about 40 degrees in there, and you get to see all the blinky lights. That's all exciting. I like that. It's not overly cost-effective sometimes. Sometimes it's exactly the right answer. So for regulatory reasons or for, there's a whole lot of reasons why you need to have your own private data center. Used to be that it was extraordinarily expensive to go to a hosted solution somewhere else, and it was a lot more cost efficient to have your own data center. But then you've got one point of failure and so on and so forth. The interesting part about this is that you're managing everything from networking to storage to the server hardware to the virtualization layers to the et cetera, all the way up. Infrastructure as a service, there are 2 kinds of infrastructure as a service at this point in time. There's traditional hosting solutions where you go out and you sign a year or 2-year-long lease, and they're going to provide you with some portion of this. Sometimes the databases they'll manage, sometimes the servers you'll manage, but they're going to provide you some level of networking, storage, power, security, et cetera, et cetera. The second one is what Amazon is doing. Amazon is an infrastructure as a service play, and but the difference between them and a traditional hoster is that it's elastic, and you can sign on an hourly basis rather than on a year-long basis. And it doesn't take 6 weeks to get a new server in place. It takes a very short amount of time. So Amazon is here in this infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service is all of this is managed for you, and you worry about your application space. How many people are infrastructure people and like doing the plumbing and that kind of side of the world? You're going to hate Azure, sorry. The rest of you who are application developers, You're going to like this because you manage the application itself. Okay? So, there's a couple of different things that we've done here with the way that we're rolling out IT and rolling out our infrastructure and our data center. This is one of the things that we're doing here. We are moving to what we're calling Gen 4 servers. And this is a set of servers. They roughly average about 2,000 servers in a single container here. That container is actually loaded up on a semi-truck. Okay? And inside of that container are the 2,000 servers. It's got its own air conditioning. It's got its own, a whole bunch of different things. And so it's a self-contained unit. That we're going to ship out, the Virtual Earth, Bing, a whole bunch of others are, Windows Azure, which is our cloud hosting solution where you can host your applications. It takes about 2 weeks to drop ship one of these pretty much anywhere in the world, which means that we can be very fast rolling out 2,000 servers at a time to just about anywhere. So that's going to allow us to be very agile. Now, this is conceptual, this is in the future, so this site does not exist yet, but this is the plan, okay? So the plan is that we're going to have these edge sites around where basically there's going to be network, water, and power. And those are the three plugs that go in. We do actually have the containers going into what are called our mega sites, and I'll show you where those are in just a minute. But these containers, they literally back them in, drop them off, and plug in water, power, and network, and they call it the 3 Ps: ping, power, and I forget what they call the water, but it's plumbing. Yes, you got it. It's ping, power, and plumbing. They do that. Then they throw up the walls and so on and so forth. Technically, they don't have to have a roof on it because they're all self-contained inside of the containers. They're going to roll these out: anchor, mega, and edge. And the theory is we'll have those wherever we need to have them. So if we've got a remote site, say that it's in a like down here they've got shown in India, a couple of different places, down around Africa in a couple of different places, we can drop one of these containers and have a massive amount of computing power dropped in one location very quickly. Now this is the mega data center in Dublin itself. This data center is actually very, very cool. They have air conditioners, but they don't turn them on. Okay, how many people have been to Ireland? So one of the very pervasive things in Ireland is the wind. And so the wind, they actually, you can see the vent right there. They actually, right there, have turned and faced the data center into the wind so that the wind is blowing in, and most of the year, they have to take the heat output from the computers and push it back into the incoming air to warm it up enough to run over the computers to cool them down, which is kind of crazy. But that data center, they've started experimenting with the power per computing unit, and they're able to get that very, 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 very close to 1-to-1 ratios. So the theory is that right now, what we do have is we've got these megas, and those anchor and edge sites will be rolling out soon. The megas in the US are Quincy, Washington, Chicago, Illinois, actually not too far from O'Hare, San Antonio, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. In Europe, we have Dublin, Ireland, and Amsterdam, and then we've got one out in Singapore as well. Now, one of the cool parts about this is that you can follow the sun, so to speak. So wherever your users happen to be, if as you set up your Azure applications, you can actually set the continent that you're going to have that computing power and that disk space and everything else on, and you can spin up and turn down as the sun goes around the earth. So, midday during the middle of the week, you've got a whole bunch of servers spinning up here in the US. In the midday in Europe, you have these. Midday during, in Asia, you're going to have the one out in Singapore. Personally, I think that's kind of cool because what it does, it places the computing power and all the other resources very, very close to your customers. So, questions so far on our on the cloud solutions and whatnot with Azure. Yeah.
Is your pricing plan be similar to how Amazon does everything?
Okay, so is the pricing plan similar to how Amazon does things? And the answer is yes and no. So we have different size virtual machines, and basically it's 1.75 gig per CPU, and then you rent, it's 12 cents an hour per CPU. So you can do a small VM with one CPU and a 1.75 gig, or you can go all the way up to 8 CPUs and 8 times 1.75. I'm too tired to do that math right now. Somebody, quick, we've got a lot of geniuses in here. 14, there we go, thank you. So now, the reality is that the VMs, the small VMs, it's 12 cents an hour for that one, and it's 12 cents an hour times 8 for the big one, okay? So what you're looking at is you're looking at roughly 96 bucks a month for that VM, okay? But you can spin them up and down as you need to. So that's the minimum bar to get in, to come play. If you need more than that, boom, we can ramp up very, very quickly. It takes somewhere between, I've seen it as low as 45 seconds, and I've seen it as long as about 10 minutes to spin up a new virtual machine. And most applications that are web applications do not actually require a tremendous amount of multi-threading, background processing, and so on and so forth. Instead, what they do is they are very short-lived calls, and so what you need is you need a plethora of machines so that you can scale not just vertically, but horizontally. Throwing 8 processors and 14 gig of RAM will allow you to scale vertically, but horizontally is actually, when you're talking about web scale, because I've heard that term thrown around a couple of times, horizontal scale is actually more important. If you think about McDonald's, for example, they didn't serve 82 billion hamburgers or whatever their number is at this point in time. Do they still put the number on the billboard? I don't think so. It got big enough that it was just kind of ridiculous. But they didn't serve that many in cereal. They're able to cook 12 hamburgers at one time, and they have however many fryers at one location, and they have however many locations. So they've got horizontal scale on cooking their hamburgers. They haven't made the cooking the hamburger process faster. They've just allowed a lot more capacity. So now if you back up and start looking at some of the other things that we have in play, FastCGI, WinCache, SQL Server, et cetera, and I'm going to talk about the data storage in just a minute. We've got lots of options that will help scale vertically, but then with Azure, you can also scale out horizontally very quickly and very easily as well. Very long answer to the question, but did I actually answer the question or dance around it neatly? All right, fantastic. Other questions? Thought I saw a hand back over here somewhere. No? Okay. All right. So that's on the computing side of things. Then on the data storage side of things, there's actually a couple of different options. One of them is that we have what's called SQL Azure, and SQL Azure is full-blown SQL Server in the cloud. You can use it today if you want to, and all you have to do is change your connection string from whatever your local SQL Server box is to the SQL Azure in the cloud, and you're good to go. Okay, so if you don't want to host SQL Server, but you need to talk to it, awesome. Talk to SQL Azure. Now, the positioning here is that SQL Azure is highly scalable. Okay, and by highly scalable, I mean it is as scalable as SQL Server or any relational database can get. But this term web scalable or web scale is actually fairly accurate. Okay, and that's where these options here come into place. Okay, the two that I want to talk about the most are blob storage and table storage. The interesting part about these options here, queues, blobs, and tables, drives is something separate. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But these three right here, these can not only be accessed from anywhere, so you can actually take advantage of this in your applications today without having to move anything else to Azure. But these are web scalable. Okay, these are massively scalable. So SQL Server or SQL Azure is highly scalable. These options here are massively scalable. Reason for that is that there's a couple of different reasons. One, just by putting your information here in the blob or the table, we automatically back it up in triplicate. Okay, so it's going to be stored twice in the same data center, and then once in a second data center. So if you are storing your stuff here in Chicago, there's you're going to have 2 copies in the Chicago data center, and you're going to have a 3rd copy that is either going to be in Quincy or San Antonio or Cambridge. Chances are it's probably going to be in San Antonio. But that's with the blobs and tables and queues. You can also, with the flick of a switch, put this information out on our content delivery network. And that content delivery network will actually replicate that information out across all of the data centers. So that, and we've got a geolocated DNS, so that if you store your data in the Chicago data center, but put it on the content delivery network, and somebody is accessing your content, your images, your JavaScript, your whatever other data you decide to put up there, if they're trying to access that information from I don't know, Belgium, they're probably going to end up being rerouted to the Netherlands data center to actually pull that information off that content delivery network. Okay, it could be either the Netherlands or Dublin, depending on where the pipes are flowing that day. So that content delivery network, very, very easy to set up. How many people have used a content delivery network in the past? How much fun is that? It's fun to get it working. It's kind of like having written a book. It's nice to have the book to be able to take out and sign, but Andrew, how much fun was it to write the book itself? Not very. That's what I've found with content delivery networks in the past, is that having it done is very exciting and very cool. The process of actually setting it up for me was very painful. Maybe I'm not as smart as you guys, but it was very painful. For here, it's literally a checkbox that says, yes, I want my data or this table on the content delivery network, and it's done. That makes me happy. I like simple things. Okay, so blobs, tables, queues, and drives. So drives, what these are, is they are actually mounted up as an NTSF volume, and these are pretty much for legacy code. So if you're doing any old school file I/O for configuration files or whatever else, you can mount up a drive. Drives actually map to an individual blob. So you can mount up a binary blob of data and treat it as if it was a file system. Okay. The problem with drives, and the reason that they're legacy, is that only one instance from Azure can actually write to them at a time. Which, when we're talking about web scale, what happens when you restrict things down to one instance? Web scale is gone. Now you're down to a bottleneck. So I don't recommend using drives unless you absolutely have to for backwards compatibility purposes as part of your migration strategy. Blobs, tables, and queues, though. Blobs are simply binary repositories where you can put data, whatever it happens to be. It could be images, it could be text, it could be whatever you wanted to put in there. And then you get a RESTful URL that you can just hit. You can lock that down and say you have to have a private public key encryption pair in order to talk to it, or you can just leave it open so that anybody can talk to that data. Tables, this actually is very, very akin to MongoDB. So if you were paying attention during Itchy's talk, all the same principles apply here. So actually, let me kick over and show you a little bit of code to talk to blobs and tables a little bit. Let me see if I have that. Here it is. This is my VM. Go up here to a full-size screen here. All right, can you guys read that code in the back at all? No? Come closer. Does anybody know in Eclipse the easy way to change the font size? I usually, on my machine, I have two little buttons here that I've got as a plugin that'll increase or decrease font size. But I don't have them here, so I can't remember. It's been forever since I've had to change font size the old-fashioned way. Yeah, well, that's useful. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. Let me see if the. Yeah. So that will. Nope. Yeah, just the glare. Yeah. All right, though the glare is worse at the top than it is the bottom, so I'll try to put the code that is important at the bottom. So first, let me slide down here and show you. You can see this line right here. I have a blob storage client. Up here towards the top, I'm creating a Microsoft underbar, Windows Azure underbar storage underbar blob. And then I've got a, checking to see if the container exists, and creating the container if it doesn't, setting the access control to public. Then down here, there is a put blob, and that is going to take which table I want to put it in, and then the row key, I'll talk about that in a minute, and then the binary file itself. So what I'm actually doing, I should just show the code running, and then I'll come back and talk about what it's actually doing. So Windows Azure, going to run in the local development fabric. One of the cool parts is that you actually do not have to buy anything other than Windows in order to test all of this. SQL Server Express is free, holds up to 10 gig worth of data. There's a couple of things that are missing from it. A lot of the more enterprise features such as reporting services and that kind of stuff. And then you can't put binary data into the SQL Server. So it's text only, but it's got all the stored procedures and everything else. Why did that not launch? Oh, because it's in a VM and it's just being slow. Okay. Anyways, then the tools themselves, the Windows Azure SDK is free. I'm running this in Eclipse, which you guys probably know. And then there's a Windows Azure set of plugins that are also free. I've got a big, long blog post on how to get all this set up correctly. Start with that if you guys decide to go down this path. All right, so I've got a very simple little blog engine here, and I'm going to create a new post. And we'll call this demo, hello, and yes, this is ugly. Browse, and we'll go pick a picture. That one's a pretty picture. Going to create our post. New post is up, and then we can go to here, and you can see the picture, and there's the text down here, the title and description and that kind of stuff. All right, now, if I back up and come to look at the code itself, what I've actually got is I've got the PA blog post here, which this is a class that has got a title and a description and an author and a publication date and an image, and this is actually a URL, this is the URL. And then we have the image type and so on and so forth, and whether or not this post is visible. This is what I'm actually sticking in the data table. So if I go back to my slide here for a minute. Where's my slide? There it is. The table here, semi-structured tabular data. Now, you saw how I inherited from the class, and I put different properties in that class. And then you'll see in a minute where I just shove that out onto the table. I can put bicycles and motorcycles and cars all in the same table. And then I can search across all of those different rows, very similar to MongoDB. And if I say engine size equals whatever, I will get motorcycles and cars back. If I say wheels equals 2, I will get bicycles and motorcycles. But it allows me to search very quickly and very easily across large disparate amounts of data very easily. Where's my VM here? Okay, and then the image itself I'm actually storing in a blob. Okay, so the blob data, that's my binary data. I didn't want to put that in the table because the blob itself is very easy to access via a RESTful URL, whereas if I put it in a table, they have to do a query against the table to pull back the data, then they have to extract the binary from the rest. That's a little messy. So instead, what I wanted to do was give this as an easy to access URL here. So, coming back here to the new post, creating my new PA blog post, setting the different properties on this, and then the table storage client, I'm just going to call insert entity. I can go to that code, and it's actually wrapping up a little bit of ugliness. This was written by Martin Ballarou. This is the Windows Azure SDK for PHP. And Martin is from Belgium, but it's actually fairly decent code. And what it allows us to do is do this very simple insert. Now, if I come back to index to retrieve, all I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve from the table itself. If I want to retrieve a specific post, or if I want to do a search, it's actually very simple. All I'm going to do is I'm going to call retrieve entity by ID, or I can retrieve entities and pass in a search parameter. And actually, as I was looking at the MongoDB syntax, it is remarkably similar. I think that there were a lot of best practices employed in both of those. So here we're going to get back the post. There's the object itself. And then all we do is we're going to loop over that, pulling out the title and description and so on and so forth. Coming back to here, for the blob itself, we have our storage client, where we're going to put the blob, and then later on, over here back in the post itself, we're just going to hit the original image URL and attach that to the image source, and that RESTful URL will just show up as a normal URL. I have some other code somewhere, if you want to catch me offline, where we can actually go through and show getting and retrieving those securely, or talking on the service level and so on and so forth. This all right now is not integrated into CakePHP, but it is just straight PHP code, so you guys can start playing with it and leveraging it. But similar to the SQL Server driver, I am actually looking for people that are interested in possibly creating a data source around the Azure tables and blob storage and that kind of stuff. Similar to the MongoDB data source. So if anybody's interested in helping me with that, let me know, and we'll get that rolling. I know that this is something that Graham has expressed interest in, but he's a busy guy, so looking for some good community support there. All right, coming back to the presentation. Okay. Kind of talk through some of this here. You can have different kinds of data in there, and you can search across different kinds of things. Let's see, SQL Azure, supporter, we've got tables, indexes, views, stored procedures, triggers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't have physical access to the server. We don't have reporting services. There's some other things that you don't care about up here, like common language runtime. In full SQL Server running out of your own data center, you can actually take C# code or VB.NET code and actually embed it in the database, where it's running, instead of running a T-SQL transaction, you can run a .NET bit of code to actually access that. So, questions so far? Yes.
Does Azure support rewrite stuff? Does anybody run Cake or PHP MVC application on Azure?
Okay. Yes, it absolutely supports URL rewrite, the same rewriting engine that I was talking about a little bit ago, and it also trying to think if there's an MVC PHP framework application up there right now, and the answer is not that I know of. But I do know that like WordPress is running in Azure. If you go to oddlyspecific.com, don't hit it right now, you'll crash the network. Oddlyspecific.com is some of the LOL cheeseburger network guys. They do fail blog and some other things. Oddly Specific is one of theirs, and they're running it in Azure right now with WordPress. I know that, well, there's a number of other projects that run fine up in Azure. PHP is a bulletin board. There's a couple of setup steps that they do on the installation that you have to kind of do locally, and then we can copy the results of that up, and it'll run just fine. But I haven't tried a Cake project yet. That was on my to-do list this weekend, and it didn't happen. I meant to do that demo with Cake, and it just didn't happen. So. Grandma, you were pushing code at 4:30 in the morning, so it's hardly your fault. You've been a very busy man. Other questions at this point? Yes?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues I always had with platform as a service, is appealing as it is if I need to install, a new PECL module or need some other command line utility that I have to run, I can't really do that on a platform as a service because I don't have access to the actual server. Are there any accommodations for that in Azure to allow some of that kind of stuff to happen?
So the question for the other side of the room is that one of the problems with one of the problems with platform as a service is that you don't have full control over it. And so it's, specifically he said if he's trying to do a new PECL module, or if there's a new command line tool that he wants to run up there, et cetera, then how's that supported, et cetera? Is that recap? Okay, so the PECL modules and the PHP install and that kind of stuff, you actually deploy that yourself, so you're actually managing what version of PHP you're running. Everything below that is taken care of from the platform as a service. One of the things that we found is that most of the command line tools that are being run on the server side are for some type of administration. Okay. What you do in that case is there's an XML configuration that will allow you to do almost any of the configuration that you would do from the command line anyway. And when you upload this one XML configuration file, boom, it replicates to all of your instances immediately. So there's no direct access to an individual instance. Now, that said, there are hooks and other things that you can do kind of backdoor if you want to attach to an individual instance. So for example, Xdebug actually has hooks so that you can live debug an instance in Azure. It's not recommended that you do that very often because the purpose of going into a cloud solution is so that you can run more than one instance. And the way that they do deployment is that they actually package up everything into a single zip file, and then that zip file is, when you need to spin up a new instance, they copy that zip file to a new virtual machine, spin it up. So anything that you do on that virtual machine is transient. If you decide that I'm going to have 5 today, or 5 this hour, and I'm going to have 3 the next hour, and I'm going to have 15 the next hour, you can do that. But anything that you did on an individual instance, could just go away. It's also potentially, depending on the hosting, or the current application environment, they may move your VM from one physical machine, to another physical machine, and you'll never know the difference. What they'll do is they'll spin up an instance over here, and then once it's up and ready, they'll redirect the load balancer and then take this one down. There's actually some rumors about them doing some of that because if there's a heavy computing load in the front of the container, then all the heat's in the front of the container. So they'll spread out the physical computing load to spread out the heat consumption and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if I answered your question or just, but in short, on the PECL side, on the installing stuff, if it can be Xcopy deployed, it can go in Azure. If it is a command line utility, then we'll probably find another way to do it. But in talking to Dries from the Drupal Foundation, they're looking at Drupal Gardens. They're currently running in Azure, and they're very happy over there. But the vast majority of their investment in time sink has been writing infrastructure tools. Well, a lot of those infrastructure tools are already available through a web portal, or and everything that's in that web portal is available via a RESTful URL or RESTful service, so that you can actually talk to it from the outside with your own tools. So, all right, other questions? Okay. There's a lot of other demos that I'd love to do, but I've got about 9 hours worth of code that I could sling for you guys, but I think that Graham has some lightning talks and other things up here very shortly. With that, I want to say thank you for hanging out. I've got, if you are interested in any of this stuff, we've got a number of different ways to get a lot of software. So if you are a consulting shop that's less than 10 people, you get 3 copies of Visual Studio, which you may or may not care about, 2 copies of Expression Web, which is actually a fantastic WYSIWYG cascading style sheet editor that's got pretty good PHP support. A copy of Expression Studio, which is our rich front-end design stuff. I know that you guys have had a couple of different Flex talks. If you've heard of Silverlight, Expression Studio is how you do that. 4 procs worth of SQL Server, 4 procs worth of Windows Server, and those are go to production licenses. And all that's available through Microsoft Website Spark for 3 full years with no upfront cost. And at the end of the 3 years, you owe us a whopping, staggering $100. So personally, I like that program a lot. And then we also have one called BizSpark. So if you're a startup that is less than 3 years old, with less than $1 million in revenue, with there's a couple other restrictions, privately held, and producing technology as your product. So if you're producing coffee cups and you need a website, no. But if you're producing software or software as a service as your product, then you can sign up for BizSpark, and that gives you 25 MSDN licenses for 3 years for $100. And then if you're a student, there's also DreamSpark, which is free, and that'll give you basically an MSDN license for that. Lots and lots of good resources out there. And then, of course, again, my blog at joshholmes.com. So with that, thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, the presentation will actually go up on SlideShare at slideshare.com/user/Josh Holmes. And then you can also, what's that? And he's got the whole thing on video. So we'll be dropping a video up. Hopefully I didn't lie too much. And teasing. But the slides will be up on SlideShare. There's a video, and I will put some speaking notes up on the blog, on my blog itself. So, cool. Thank you.